Hello and welcome to the Car Camera Review channel, and welcome to the 2024 Subaru Outback. And in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood. We're going to take a look underneath the car. We're going to take a look at the outside and the inside. Some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood of the Outback, which comes with two engine options. The first one is a 2.5-liter boxer engine, 4-cylinder, non-turbo, which is cool. The second one is, which is this one, 2.4-liter boxer, 4-cylinder, turbo. So what I like about this is they give you kind of two options. You want more power with a turbo, or you want less power without a turbo. I guess that is pretty cool, but did you know that these two engines are actually pretty similar in constructions? So are all modern Subaru Boxers. They're very similar in construction. So let's start kind of talking about them. They're both similar. We'll talk about some of the differences here. So at not the top, because this is a Boxer and things are laid the wrong way on the side, the very top is a plastic valve cover. This is something when they updated their generation engines, they moved to a plastic valve cover. Decent quality valve cover. I don't think we're going to have issues with them. So there's two of them. And then a two-piece aluminum cylinder head. That's a design they've used for some time. So you have a cam cradle with two cams on each side. So this engine has 4 cams. And then variable valve timing gears in the front. This engine does have 2 chains, one for each bank, which has 2 cams on each side. Very interesting setup. Now, this does have roller rockers, but it does not have hydraulic lifters. It has something that looks like a hydraulic lifter, but it's not. I don't understand why Subaru still does this. Maybe because it's a Boxer, you couldn't have the oil pressure going to the sides like that. But the way you adjust valve clearance in this engine, there's a little cap that sits on top of the stem of the valve. That's how you adjust the valve clearance. So this engine, you still have to adjust valves. And the only way to do that is to pull the engine out. Not a very difficult proposition, but I wish they would have just done it hydraulic and we're done with that. Now this engine also has the world's biggest front timing cover. I mean, this thing spans from here all the way to the other side. Very scary when you pull it out because it has a lot of sealer. Speaking of sealer, this engine is very delicate with sealer because of the way the Boxer is. Oil pumps right in the nose of the crank in the middle, and then oil goes through that giant front cover into cylinder on one side, block, and then the cylinder on the other side. It's very delicate with oiling, so service on these is very important. A specialist working on these is actually ideal because they know about this and they will take extra care of it. Now the block is aluminum, and this is a 2-piece block. All Boxers are similar to that, all Subaru Boxers. They did something with the later iterations of this engine. They thinned the cylinder walls to lower the weight and give you better gas mileage. That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Time will tell, because you have gravity working against you, and now you have a thinner wall. That's not a great idea. Now, moving away from that, these engines are direct injected only. Unlike the BRZ that has Toyotas, this one is direct injected only. Now, the high pressure fuel pump sits right on the side, has a very heavy duty cover on top of it for insulation, which is pretty nice. They're very simple direct injectors. They do sit on the side of the cylinder head right underneath the massive intake manifold. Now, the 2.4 turbo is a turbo engine, of course. The other one doesn't have this. So this has the turbo all the way in the front, kind of underneath the engine. That's how the Boxers usually put their turbos. It is oil and coolant cooled. It does have a vacuum controlled wastegate, which is nice. It does have an air-to-air intercooler in a very Subaru fashion. It's not in the front. It is right on top of the engine. Now, just like all you need is a stencil and put STI, WRX, however you guys like to put it there. But it sits right on top of the engine. I think it's a simple place. It's right there. But they do have this very interesting vent system that pulls air through the grill to cool that intercooler. I wish they would have put a scoop. That would be very cool in an Outback. Makes all your neighbors jealous for a functional hood scoop from a Subaru. Now the cooling system in this engine, equally the 2.5 as well, the non-turbo, very basic. They have a mechanical water pump, belt driven, very simple. They don't have fancy valves. They have actually a very basic cooling system, which is nice. Now, something that Subaru's been doing in the later iterations of their cars, this one included, they got rid of the vacuum pump because these engines were initially designed with a vacuum pump for the brake booster. But this, and basically almost all Subaru models today in 24, they have an electronic booster, which works really well. You immediately notice the brake feel is different, and you don't have a vacuum pump as a result because you don't no longer rely on vacuum for your brake booster operation. Now, a few observations here, a few cool things that they did here. See, the initial version of these two engines, they had oiling problems. Every time you make a sharp turn, oil pools on one side because there was a giant void behind the valve cover. They actually put a big spacer that takes up that void so oil wouldn't pool on one side or another. In addition to that, they added an oil cooler right underneath the oil filter, which I love the location of these oil filters right in front of you. It makes life so simple. You don't have to go digging around finding it. I love Subaru for doing that. Now, looking around here, I will say one thing. Once you've worked on one modern Subaru engine, you kind of worked on all of them. They're all very similar, and I love that because its construction is simple and similar. And the most important part is, I look around here, there's no cheap and flimsy. Everything feels solid. There are a few things, nothing important, but the important stuff. I really like everything they're doing. The only thing that works against this powertrain or this particular engine is the boxer part. Boxers do have their limitations. They're great because they're wide and they're low, so they kind of keep the center of gravity low and everything, and they have that distinct sound. But unfortunately, their downside is they will always have oiling issues. They're very delicate with that, so maintenance is very important. The other thing is gravity works against you. You have the pistons laying on their sides, so will always wear one side of the cylinder wall more than the other. Again, maintenance is very important with these engines. You can get high miles out of these cars, but you gotta be really in the know of how to take care of them because they do require some care. That's the only thing I'll tell you. Take care of these cars, they're actually made well. They will last. Now, the transmission that is mated to this engine is a CVT transmission. Subaru initially had issues with their CVTs like everybody else, and things have been kind of calming down, which is nice. The only one thing I will say about this CVT, you will really have to push this car to make it drone, and that was something really nice. First, this particular one that we drove that has the 2.4 turbo makes a lot of power, and you don't feel like you have to really push the engine to make power and get the thing moving. There's a point driving this car where you're not really into paying attention to the car. You're just driving, going about your day. You almost forget you have a CVT. That's how good these things have gotten, and I really appreciate that. CVTs are very efficient, but the downside of them is the drone. This one doesn't have it as much, which is nice. Now, of course, we cannot talk about Subaru without saying the symmetrical all-wheel drive, which is one of their number one reasons you buy a Subaru. This has a real all-wheel drive system, folks. At any given time, four wheels are driving in one way, shape, or form. Majority of your wagons, front-wheel drive wagons or SUVs, as soon as you take off, they're a little bit, the rear wheels are not doing anything, it's just front-wheel drive. This is a proper all-wheel drive. The way they do this is they have a multi-plate, multi-disc clutch in the transfer case that splits the power between the front and back. It's a very sophisticated system and it's very robust. They really kind of got it packed and well done, and they kept going with it. And it's standard on all Subarus. That's a cool thing, except the BRZ, which is technically half Subaru, half Toyota. Depends how you look at it. Let's take a look underneath the Subaru Outback. And the front is covered. What I love about this is, folks, this is what I like about Subaru. They don't do flimsy very well. They usually do things well. I mean, this is a plastic cover, but just touching it and feeling it, it is really a sturdy cover, not some cheap, flimsy one. Same thing with their steel. I really like this about them. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but this is stuff that brings a smile to my face. Now, as we move back, Subaru's always done this. They leave their drain plug exposed, filters at the top, which is really nice. And I really like that the subframe remained steel. It's not aluminum. And you notice these giant braces here. These are really solid. Really like that. Before we move on from this, let's look at the front suspension. So steel knuckle, aluminum lower control arm. You notice that the ball joint is actually separate, but it lives in the knuckle. You have this one bolt here, and you open this opening and the ball joint comes out. I suppose we can live with that, but again, there's better styles with the 3 bolts here. A lot of manufacturers use them. They're easier, but hey, this works also. 2 piston caliper in the front, which is sufficient for a car of this size. This is not a very small car per se. McPherson struts in the front. I love these steel sway bar links. They're usually durable. We don't have issues with them. Everything in the front looks great. Then we move on to the transmission. This is that CVT transmission that Subaru's been using for a while now. So in case you're not familiar with this, this is the actual transmission. This is actually the front differential. And if we turn around and look here, you see how the front axles come out? This is the differential, this is the transmission, and then the transmission also drives the back. You see the drive shaft coming out and go into the back. Now the exhaust on Subarus, medium quality. Some of them are better than others. This one seems to be the medium quality. They're decent, they're not the best, not the worst. I like the heat shields. They always use decent quality heat shields. This car has really good insulation on the sides, although it feels like a carpet. I like that it's insulated almost all the way. You do have a little bit of pinch weld exposed. Then as we walk our way back, the rear differential, I really like rear differentials from Subaru. It's not a big differential, but you notice it is cast iron and it doesn't have a disconnect mechanism because this is a symmetrical all-wheel drive car. It's always in one shape or form of all-wheel drive, not disconnect the rear as soon as we start going, which is pretty cool. Now we look at the rear suspension. Super simple double wishbone suspension. Here's that upper control arm that is aluminum. Ball joint's part of it, so if you replace this, this is going to be part of it. Few arms at the bottom, which is very simple. You do have a coilover, so this is a strut in the back, not a separate spring. It's got a little bit of an older design, but it works. You do have an aluminum knuckle here, and you do have a single piston caliper with the integrated park and brake motor on it. That's a really good design. And then you do have another steel sway bar link, which is pretty cool. Now this does have dual exhaust, even though it's 4-cylinder. You do have the dual exhaust. They do split here. I love that this is somewhat covered. It's not 100% covered, but it is covered here. On this side, you do have a little bit of a shield. I'm assuming this is a heat shield. Everything looks very Subaru-like here. Nothing over the top. I mean, the suspension is super simple, but it's well made, and that's what I really appreciate about this car. Let's take a look at the outside of the Subaru Outback. And there is no other car in the Subaru lineup that has this quintessential Subaru look. When you look at it, it is not going to win any beauty contests, but in my heart, it does. Because you cannot mistake this for anything but a Subaru. I think the Ascent looks like this, but it has that extra thing on top, which makes it look really odd. I feel like they took this and made the Ascent, but this looks right because this is. But let's look at the important Subaru bits. Notice this giant ground clearance. And this is a family car. Huge ground clearance, which is something very important for Subaru. Now they do have some hood lines here, but what I like about this is it's not too much. That's the key thing here. They have a design, they stuck to it, and it works. One thing that is interesting, there is this little protrusion. I don't know why we need that. It looks very expensive to make, but they did do that. Now they do have this black cladding to kind of give it an off-roady look or a rugged look. Not my favorite thing in the planet, but it's not the end of the world. Same thing here on the side. And I really dislike this odd shape. Just makes my OCD go through the wall because it just feels like unsymmetrical. That's just me. And the same thing in the bottom. The same thing in the back. However, look at that ground clearance. Newer cars are getting lower and lower and lower, and this thing has a huge ground clearance, which I really like. And then another interesting thing I like here, look at this. I don't know if this is real aluminum. It doesn't feel like it. I really like this. This is kind of cool. And they really went all out to integrate the belt molding into the mirror. I think that was a pretty cool touch. This gives it a unique look. That was pretty cool. The other thing is, this is a wagon. We don't have a lot of wagons in 2024. This is one of the better ones, in my opinion. The one that's still going. I really like how it looks. This has you cannot mistake this for anything but a Subaru look. But what I love more about that is, now this does have a intelligent key, or however you want to call it. You can lock it and unlock it from the front, not the back. Understandable for its price point. But I really like the feeling of these door handles. You know, newer cars are getting flimsier and flimsier. This one, I really like the feel of this handle, and I appreciate the quality that they have here. And another thing that is very interesting here, so you look at this scaffolding in the bottom, not my favorite thing in the planet, but that's a matter of taste. But there's something very cool here. See, most cars that have scaffolding that sticks out of it, when you get in it, it's gonna dig into your leg. As you get in, you kind of have to hop over it. Look what they did here. Do you see this intentional cutout? So when you get in, it's not going to be in your way, because imagine if this was all straight like this. You really have to reach in to clear that, and you're going to hit it as you get your other leg in. That is pretty cool. Now the fuel door is interesting. I just feel like there is a lot of just like sunken in. Not an issue, it's just an interesting observation. Usually you'll have it right here. This one is sunken in. Then we look at the back, again, kind of a classic Subaru design. Looks good. It's not going to win any beauty contests, but it's going to win your heart with its simplicity. And it is pretty simple. However, there's one thing that is, let's do the badge deal. Subaru badge, looks great, looks right. Then we write Subaru again. Symmetrical all-wheel drive, where all Subarus except the BRZ is. Outback, Touring, XT. I just feel like we're getting carried away with the badges. But this car is an older design. You notice the bumper. Look at this huge bumper right here. You hit something, you have a lot of real estate before you actually hit the back door, and that is really nice. This is probably gonna go away at some point. Let's look in the back here, which is, this particular one does have a power back door with a small surprise. We just reviewed the Tiguan, and we said it only has one motor, and they really made it very complicated. Well, this one does the same thing. It's actually only this one is a motor, not this one. And then the wire goes this way, not into the door. I mean, folks, all these doors, they have a lot of them. You have lights here, you have all kinds of stuff. So you have these two wires going in. I don't know why manufacturers choose to do this. Now, if you want to replace this, you have to tear down all this to get to the wire. Instead of just having to go through the door, you just pop the panel, and it's right there. And the use of one, not my favorite thing. I wish they would have used two, but I guess that's where they deemed cost cutting necessary. We look at the back area here, it's pretty big. And that's, I think, what these cars are meant for. If you don't want an SUV, you want something that is capable as an SUV, like this, symmetrical all-wheel drive and whatnot, but it has a lot of space in the back. I almost feel like, did they try to fit a third row here? Because that would be really cool to have a car that's not super high with a third row. I think it's not possible. Because over here, so I peel this all-weather mat, you have all your tools. You do have a place to stow your tonneau cover, which I really like. But then underneath this, it's a little difficult to pull, we have a spare tire. A pretty large one too. It's still a mini spare tire, but kind of a large one. I like this. You notice there's absolutely no insulation. What I love about this is Subaru quality for the stuff that you won't see and you'll never know about. Look at the sealer. Look at the sealer application. It may not look pretty on camera, but folks, in the automotive world, if you have sealer like looks like this, we're doing very good. This is how good sealer application should be. That tells you that they care about even the things you don't see. That speaks volumes. Now the cool thing is these seats, you have these little handles, put seats down. Of course they are manual, you have to go back and get them out. But I love this. This is super simple. Actually reminds me of a old 90s door handle. It's pretty cool. Another thing that I like, it does have these lights, which you can actually turn off or make them with the door. This is super helpful. It lights up this area when you're at night. And then You can close the door or close the door and lock it, which is nice. I just wish Subaru would have put an electronic shock here too. The only good thing of this is, if this ever goes out, you only have to replace one, not two. The second thing is, you could just go buy a shock and put it here and convert it easily. And the last thing that's super interesting, so this particular trim has one of those rear view mirror cameras deals. I really don't like them, but it does have them if you like them. But interesting about that is, you have the rear view camera right here. This is when you put it in reverse. But the camera for the mirror sits in a very unusual spot, right on the shark fin. And that is a very interesting spot. Usually they put them like right underneath the third light, somewhere here. This one has it right on the shark fin. It's a pretty interesting spot for it. Let's take a look at the interior of the 2024 Subaru Outback. And there's only one thing to say about this. This is a breath of fresh air in 2024. When you get into a car, it is basic, it is simple, yet it is nice and focused. Except the screen, which we will talk about. Right in front of you is two mechanical gauges. No drama, no giant screen, no fuss, because you don't need that. Most of these cars have giant screens here. They only add to the price of them, and they do absolutely nothing. These two gauges and tiny screen in the middle don't do. And then you look at the dash itself. There is no fuss, no drama. It's just a dash. It's not huge, it's not tiny, it's just perfect size. And then the seats. This particular trim has these really nice brown seats. Initially you look at them, it's like brown. But actually seeing them in person, I really like them. I think it kind of fits, and they have this nice piece here. It just feels very nice, but not over the top. And that is the nice thing. However, this is all plastic. Everything here is plastic. It doesn't feel like a cheap, flimsy plastic. It feels like well made. And the fit finish on everything, it's the Subaru way. It's well made. And that's what I like about this. Shifter is physical and mechanical. Doesn't need to change. It works great, and there's no need to change it. Now, there is one giant elephant in the room, which is the infotainment screen. Now, they've been using this giant screen for a while, and unfortunately it took out all your physical controls for the HVAC, something very un-Subaru-like. Initially, in the models that we've gotten, they really needed to add a few more shortcuts. They did an update, and they added them, and it's nice. Now you have your auto hold visible, and you have your start, stop, cancel visible, but you still need to customize the HVAC, and it's your heated seats and the cool seats, they're still in there, and it's kind of a un-Subaru thing. But the best part is, the very Subaru part about this is, you still have a CD player, and it lives right here in the center console. Very interesting spot. Takes a lot of your center console space, but they just had to do it. And this is what I don't understand about this infotainment screen deal. When you put this giant screen, it does have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and then we have a CD player. Which audience are we going after? The CD player generation or the modern generation that wants touch screen everything? That's what I wish they would change here. The one thing I will say about the infotainment system, it works, but it's extremely slow to boot. I mean, you connect your wireless Apple CarPlay, it's literally glitchy and like taking its time until it finally loads up and it starts working. That's the one thing I really dislike. One thing that is interesting, you look at the steering wheel with the buttons. This is the simplest layout you will ever see in a car. Very easy to understand, very simple to operate, and I love it. And then the heated steering wheel is a physical button on the steering wheel itself. I love that. Just keeps things simple, because they don't need to be complicated, because this is a Subaru. Now, the last thing we will talk about, another elephant in the room, is a driver monitor. Thankfully, it's only available in the higher trims, but it is, so there's an infrared camera right here that scans your face. You can register your face, and every time you get in the car, you feel like you are passing through TSA and in there scanning your face and doing all that. A little bit over the top, because you're driving, you're a Subaru driver. This is a simple car that's not going to get in the way of our life. You're driving and you need to turn on your heated seats or cooled seats. Now we're going in here and then this thing is beeping at you and it's just super annoying. I wish they did not have that. And usually Subaru drivers are good drivers. Not a compliment, it's the truth. They're more focused on safety and usually families. So they usually are paying attention. They don't need a driver monitor to be beeping at them all day long because they're distracted by the very unnecessary screen with no physical controls. That's just my humble 2 cents about that one. And there's another thing that's very interesting about this seat. So it's a power seat in this particular trim, which is very standard, lumbar support, whatnot. But there is these thigh support extenders. They're manual. Kind of pull them, they spring out, and then you can adjust them. I don't know how I feel about this one. I wish it was electric, but I mean, I guess at least we have them. Usually a lot of cars actually don't have them. This one does, which I suppose that is nice as well. Let's take a look at the second row seat of the Subaru Outback. I'm 5'7". This is my driving position. I have very good knee room. I have decent headroom, even though this has a sunroof, which is really nice. This seat is super comfortable, unlike the front one that can have a few things about it. This one is very comfortable. I really like it. You can sit 3 adults here very comfortably. You do have a high transmission tunnel because you do have a drive shaft that goes back. In the back, you do have some vents. You have heated seats in this particular trim, and some USB-C and USB-A. Of course, that CD player in the front, just to cover all age ranges, I suppose. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the 2024 Subaru Outback, starting with the not very Subaru parts. They made them, I don't mean they're made by somebody else, but they don't fit the infotainment screen. While they updated it, and they're heading toward the right direction, the whole thing just doesn't make sense in a Subaru. Physical buttons would have been much better at the bottom for the HVAC, and then leave the screen. And I noticed going from the models that didn't have the update to the model that, like this one, that did have the update, it's extremely glitchy and slow when it starts up. I mean, it takes a while for it to really start working properly, especially if you have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, wireless, which is nice, but it is slow when it starts up. So give the Subi a minute to load up on the infotainment system. The other thing is the driver monitor, and Subaru is really proud of this driver monitor, and I understand they're about safety, they're about families and whatnot, but it's extremely annoying. I mean, you're trying to go in there to change something from this giant screen, you like turn on your heated seats or cooled seats, and it starts beeping at you. And then you drive at night, there's a distinct red light right in your face. Maybe I am the only person affected by it, but it's just a red light in your face at all times, and it's going to scan your face, and you want to register your face. I just don't want you to look at my face. Can you just let me drive? That's the feeling you get. Now, these two things you can easily live without if you get a base model that doesn't have the driver monitor or whatnot. But the seats, this is something with Subaru for a very long time. The seat itself is comfortable, but the thigh support, if you put it all the way down, it digs into your legs. If you put it all the way up, especially if you're not tall, it's just going to stretch your legs. It's not the most comfortable seat in the planet. And the Subaru's been doing this for a long time. I just wish they would work on their seat comfort a little bit better. And a lot of folks complain about this. So should you buy a 2024 Subaru Outback? Folks, there is no denying one thing. I love cars like this because they make a promise to deliver a couple things and they do them very well. Nothing more, nothing less, no gimmicks, no drama, nothing. What this car promises to deliver is, it is a functional family car. For those who like adventuring, maybe we'll go some off-roading, but don't want to buy a truck with low range and everything. And it is safe, it is reliable, and it is well made. That is what you get in this car. Now, you look at the outside. Some folks will see this and be like, this is just a blobby car that just looks like blends into the background. But that's exactly the point. They did not go over the top to wow you with the way it looks. It's a sensible design that works. You look at the inside. In this particular trim, this is a very nice inside. I have to say it. It's well made, it's sensible, it's basic, and it just very much a Subaru. It's what you expect out of the Subaru, except the screen and the driver monitor and the seats. Seats seem to be a thing with Subaru for a long term. Not everybody, but some folks will notice that. And that screen, although it got an update, and we're really excited that they're moving toward the right direction, it still needs some work, and physical buttons would have been much better. Subaru owners, past owners, current owners, future owners, please comment below. Maybe Subaru will look and they will hear you out. Physical buttons on the HVAC would have been much better, because that's what Subaru owners expect. Simple, rugged, nothing more, nothing less. This car, I think, highlights are its all-wheel drive, symmetrical all-wheel drive system. It's a proper all-wheel drive system that works very, very well, kind of class-leading in this segment, at least in my opinion. And the other thing is high ground clearance, no drama. There is no like swoopy design and makes the function not good. It's just a basic interior and it works very well. And something surprising about this car is how quiet it is. I mean, usually you don't expect Subarus to be quiet at their price point, but this one is surprisingly very quiet, at least in this particular trim. And prices, because this is a little bit of an older model that is still going, prices have not skyrocketed yet. But when you go on the base model, it's not very expensive for what it is and what it offers. And what it offers is the all-wheel drive, the high ground clearance, and the good build quality. That you get it in the base model and in the top trim. And that's the cool thing. And even in powertrains, there's a very Subaru powertrain choice. If you want more power, you opt to the turbo engine, that makes a lot more power. If you want a simpler powertrain, you don't really like turbos, you just want an engine without a turbo, well, they still offer it, and that is really cool. Folks, I really like this car. It's not perfect, but that's the Subaru way in 2024. It's still very much alive and well, and I really admire it and appreciate it. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.